Hi, good morning. It's Jim from maverickstar Observatory. Over the last few days, obviously, I've not put up any content on YouTube. I've been doing a little bit of thinking about the situation which we're in at the moment with the observatory. And I've also been giving a thought to a bigger problem, which I'm going to discuss a bit later on in the video. So I'd just like to say big thanks to just a few people that constantly chip in a few bucks here and there, and keep the observatory just above the waterline, if you get what I mean. One of the problems that we've had when I look at it in general, if you was a professional manager, and you was just suddenly given the observatory, you would spot a couple of problems with it. You'd say, first of all, it's underpowered, and secondly, probably underfunded. And the problem is with these two things is that they slow generally down the progression of anything. It's not a shortage of one thing. So we're lucky that we've got that one thing, and that is the skills. Over the years, I've been able to apply my skills to different areas to get the observatory just the essentials in which it's needed. And if I haven't had those skills, I've certainly taught myself those skills. So recently, just to give you an idea, over the last say 5 years or so, some of the extra skills that I've had to teach myself was electronics engineering and programming. Two independent skill sets, and equally needed to be at a level that could produce what we wanted. And if you remember, when we was building the Trimag system, we first of all approached a few companies just to get an idea of how much it could cost, and whether there was the ability then to raise the money to get that company to manufacture it for us. But we quickly found that to build a one-off piece of equipment, was going to be well over £100,000, and it was explained to me why that was. You need project engineers who manage the electronics and the programming and the product development and testing and everything else. So each one of those positions, as you can imagine, is a highly skilled job and very well paid. And when you're employing a company to utilise their skilled people, obviously they're billing you for each one of these, and then you've got tooling on top of that. And building one of anything is very expensive, as you might well know, because once you've built one, generally you can build the second one faster, because the development costs are no longer there. You've finished your project and you're happy with it, you've done the tests and you're happy with its performance, and therefore you no need to do those certain things again. So for that reason, once you've achieved the one, then the second one, the price of the second one and the third one and the fourth one comes dramatically down. And that is generally the manufacturing process in which we use, because not many people set up to build something unique and then only build one of them. The other thing that we've had a problem of is the manpower. And so we've got the skills, so it's like saying to two men now, can you build the Brooklyn Bridge? Excuse me. And they say, yes, we can build the Brooklyn Bridge, we've got the skills, we need the materials and we can build it. But can you imagine how long it would take just two men with all the skills they needed to build the Brooklyn Bridge? It would take forever. If you had a lot more men, all skilled in different areas, with the task of building the Brooklyn Bridge given out to each of those, which I'm sure was the case when it was built, you would have the Brooklyn Bridge built perhaps in less than 12 months or less. So we've been faced with both these problems here at the observatory, and there is another problem we can throw at those two guys with the Brooklyn Bridge, is we could throw in the problem with funds. So they've got the skills and they could build the Brooklyn Bridge. It might take 80 years for them to complete it on their own, or maybe, I don't know, let's say realistically, I don't know, 20 years. as opposed to under 12 months with a bigger team. It might be longer. Just for argument's sake, I think you agree with the analogy I'm using here. But if they have a lack of funds, so they get funds one day to build a certain component, and then for the next week they have to wait for the funds to come in again to build the next component, that 30 years could very well expand, depending on the need for it, which would increase the need for which would increase the fund rate that was raised. It could take a lot longer. And we've been faced with these problems here at the observatory. We haven't got a skill set problem. We do have a labour problem. We have got a funding problem, which slows us down manufacturing the components that we need. And in general, that's the general status of our observatory. With funding, shamefully, I have to mention in most videos that there's a link down there, and we really could do with the funds in order to get more equipment built so we could get it out into the field and collect more data. If we'd have had more funds and still had a shortage of manpower, we could have still progressed. Like those two guys could have built the Brooklyn Bridge in 20 years and not 80 years waiting for the funding, but it still would have took a long time. So what I'm saying here is we've been penalised by two things which have slowed the progression down at the observatory, and that's why we are here where we are today. But I've got to say this, where we are today is still well above and in forward than a lot of other people that are discussing this topic. We do have the TriMag system, which locates the exact position of the magnetic North Pole every month. We collect a lot of resolution and data on the magnetic North Pole migration, sometimes over 300,000 data sets, as you can imagine. And we have got a lot of equipment in there in the field. And, it's been almost a miracle to get it to where we are today. And, to try and encourage people to continue funding this is another problem as well. For a lot of people that follow us on YouTube, this topic is quite exciting because they get the concept. This is a very rare anomaly, and that we find ourselves today faced with it taking place, and we don't know really what will be the outcome. When people say to me, what's going to happen when the poles reverse, all I can go on is what I have witnessed accelerate in the last 30 years, which is dislocating of polar jet streams and therefore mixing with subtropical and vice versa, both over the northern and southern hemispheres, bringing climate chaos to countries all over the world. And these things, as we've seen, displace people, destroy crops, and devastate millions and millions of people. And this is something that's been on the increase over the last 30 years. So if we use that to go by, when the next when the actual poles go into reversal, I would expect that those things to be on the acceleration, as well as an increase perhaps in cancer rate at that point. And not only that, we could see various other things. Like people say to me, do you think that the earthquakes are going to increase in magnitude and frequency? I really don't know. Some people would argue over the last 30 years that earthquakes have already increased in magnitude, so that the earthquakes have got worse and the frequency has. And if you look over the last 10 years or last 20 years, you will see that we've had some of the biggest earthquakes that have ever been recorded in the last 100 years, just in that time period. And then they say to me about the volcanoes, are we going to see more volcanic activity, and could that accelerate during the pole reversal? And again, I can't be 100% sure. What I will say is the things that set about the changes for earthquakes to become more frequent and volcanoes to become more frequent are a component possibly of what creates our dynamo in the Earth that sets up the effect for magnetic poles to form on our planet, and therefore the magnetosphere, because they are all components of the interior of the Earth. So maybe, we will see further increases in earthquakes, further increases in volcanic activity during a process of reversal. So when we pass, perhaps, if my theory is right, that 40-degree mark, we will go into an accelerated state where we could see those things increase, like volcanoes and earthquakes, as well as further worsening of the jet streams, setting up major problems with climates, and therefore, sorry, in general, it is going to affect more people, and it can affect not just the vulnerable people, like in Vietnam, like we saw those 175,000 people that had suffered some cyclones that had delivered so much water, it had flooded their homes past the roofs and destroyed all their crops, and generally caused a catastrophe for that region of the Earth at that time. We've also saw on the other hand, modern cities like Texas be affected by a 30 or 100 year Arctic blast, and as a result it knocked the grid out, and in turn again affected large sums of people in the numbers to 100 million. And this is two different scenarios we're looking at. Not such a high-tech society in Vietnam being wiped out, and then we're looking at a real super high-tech city like Texas, and a state like Texas dramatically being affected by those very things that cities need and are critically dependent on, like the electric and the supported grid that supplies the electric to the homes in the city. I've always said this, cities are very independent and not sustainable areas where a lot of people live in one spot, and because of that they're dependent on the logistics of energy, food, water, sewerage going in and out of those cities every day. So a disruption like we saw where they had that cold winter Arctic snap descend down on it, and it knocked the grid out, which was probably like stopping the heartbeat. It almost killed the state for a couple of weeks. We are approaching a time where we're about to tip over the edge and go back into a glacial period. The poles that are reversing on the planet could also speediate that, and therefore we are probably facing a scenario like Texas did, but all over the northern southern hemisphere of the Earth. And this is where the majority of the inhabitants of the Earth live, and if food production, grid failure is a common occurrence all over the northern hemisphere, we could be looking at something that sends us back into the dark ages, where we emerge using sticks and stones again for a period of time. What you've got to remember is that when companies like we rely on today, that when they're building one product, they rely on 30 other companies to supply that company with subcomponents to build that product. When they're no longer in business for a long period of time, to try and re-establish that network to get that one product built again, like a computer, is very difficult, because if you were in a situation where people have had to fend for themselves for a prolonged period of time, they certainly won't be going back to that job waiting for everybody else to come along so that they can build the subcomponent, and then all the other 29 companies that is relied upon to make that one product for the bigger company to come online, and then that bigger company can make its product. And in turn, each one of these different companies has got to wait for their counterparts to get their little companies back online. So you see the problem becomes almost a problem that can't be fixed, and can't be fixed short term, and because it can't be fixed short term, it can't be fixed long term. And that gives you an idea, if you really understand what I'm saying, of the vulnerability of what we really face. So when you understand that analogy of how things can't easily be put back together to keep society functioning as it does today, you understand that there is probably 95% chance that if the grid was to go down for probably about 4 or 5 months, let's say, the chances are that things would never go back to the way they were from that point. And it's something that we've brought upon ourselves. This brings us to the second thing I wanted to talk about, and that is thinking about what is the biggest issue that we are facing today and the cause of that. And that is the increase in my view, the increase in technology and the accelerated pace at which we've arrived at today with our level of technology. I was discussing it with someone the other day, and I said, I think the problem is with human beings is that they just simply can't cope with the level of technological changes that we've made in the last 20 years. We simply cannot cope with them. And, as a result of that, there's a lot of people with mental illness that can't, function in today's society. We've got lots of mental problems caused by the technology that we've created. And a lot of people have been pushed out of society simply because they can't grasp the technology that's here today. It's like a lot of elderly people, I'm talking senior citizens, not only do they not have an interest in all the apps that are on phones today, for them, if it just rings and they're able to talk to their loved ones, that's good enough for them. That's what the phone's purpose is. And as for the computer, they haven't even got the energy to put into just even learning the basics to use it. And that's very difficult in a day and age like today, because most things are required this day to be done online, and emails to be sent as opposed to hard paper letters and postage. And they don't cope. But another thing is that another sector of people that aren't coping is on the other end of the spectrum, funnily enough, and that is the very young, because they're growing up in a situation where they've heard the stories of their parents talking and the grandparents talking about how easy it was for them to get jobs, and they could walk out one job on the morning and be in another job by the afternoon. There was that many vacancies for jobs, and the reason for that is we were manufacturing much more 30-40 years ago than we was today, and it wasn't so high tech. I mean, there was a lot of jobs that existed 30-40 years ago than today that don't exist, such as paper clerks and a lot of other jobs. I'm not going to go into them. I'm pretty sure you can remember a lot of jobs that used to be but now has been replaced by technology. And welders, let's put it this way, they used to be employed in car manufacturers and other types of manufacturing, a lot more welders, but now it's all robotics that assemble the cars on the production line. And those are jobs that have been lost, and skills that have been lost, skills that you couldn't replace overnight, like coach building and things like that. There isn't many professional coach builders out there anymore. So a lot of our young generation get frustrated at the fact that it's so difficult now to get a job. In some cases, over 1,000 people applying for that same job, and it doesn't. So they think to themselves, or the parents think to themselves, look, we can see this situation. He needs to go, or she needs to go. Our daughter or our granddaughter needs to go to college and then university. So they need to decide very early on what they want to do in life as a career, and then they need to start off on the route to getting that career under the belt. So they go to university and study whatever profession that might be a lawyer, veterinary doctor, or a surgeon, or a normal general practitioner, or an engineer or something which requires a specific skill set and knowledge that is given at the university level. And when they get that, they've invested a lot of time in their education. A lot of the time they've built up also debt to the tune of £50,000 to £100,000. They've had to work at the same time doing part-time jobs after college in pubs, bars and restaurants, to give them a little bit of extra money so they probably pay for student accommodation and things like that. And they leave the job and still no longer in a better position to get employment. And it can lead to a breakdown for that person, because all the expectations are suddenly realised that their friends that didn't take the route of university haven't got £100,000 worth of debt, are probably already on the property ladder, and they've either gone self-employed, or they managed to find themselves a non-profession job which has enabled them to obtain a wage at that point. They've been lucky to slip through the net of those 1,000 people going for that one job and get that job, and they compare themselves with them. The other thing is that they leave university and realise that they're in such a heavily competitive environment now, because not only have they got left this year with their university results, their degree or their masters or their PhD, they find that another 1,000 people did throughout the country. And if they look internationally across the range, we're talking tens of thousands of people every year leaving university with that same level of qualification. So they are flooding the market with a particular skill set, and therefore when anything, as we now come to realise, is in less demand and there is more of, the value of it goes down. So that job that was probably paid £60,000 to £100,000 a year is now being paid at £30,000 a year, and is a salary that could have possibly be achieved with no university documents at the end of it. So and in general, the governments have failed to see this. There's a massive problem with the evolution of technology. It has created so many problems across a lot of ranges, and each time we have gone to a new level of technology, we haven't addressed the problems that technology will create, as opposed to it coming onto the market. I'll give you, for instance, we have had in the past, a more labour-intensive industry. So this new technology that's going to come onto the block is going to take away jobs, and we've not had the safety net there put there for those people to move into new skills, obtain an opportunity to get another job. In a lot of cases, when technology has come about, some people have lost their jobs and never been able to get them, because that was the job that they'd done most of their life and didn't know anything else. So we have been a bit negligent. On one hand, we've been very excited that we've got the technology, but on the other hand, we haven't addressed and dealt with the problems that technology has caused. And as a result, we find ourselves here today where we are. So I wanted to share those ideas with you. I'm really interested in your comments in the sections down there, and also I'll mention as we talked in the beginning of the video with regards to the building of the Brooklyn Bridge, and the same situation being with the maverickstar Observatory. If we had more funding and still a shortage of labour, we could still cut that 80 years down to 20 years. If we was able to raise enough money for other people to work for our observatory, we could cut that 20 years down to probably 2 years or 1 year, and that is entirely up to you. as to what you want to see happen. And I know we fall in a science area, and for a lot of people, they don't value science much, especially on YouTube. When you see the channels that have the great numbers of subscribers, not many of them are science based. Not many of them are specific in the science that they talk about, like we are here with the magnetic pole reversal. Even despite this being the rarest anomaly that humanity has ever gone through, it still isn't out there on the larger radar being pumped out there for people to get awareness of it. But you know, it's down to you guys. This is your observatory. We call it a public observatory, and we call it a publicly funded observatory. We just hope that we're able to continue obtaining the funds to slowly, progressively improve it. If we can raise a lot more funds, then we can improve things faster, and we can cover distance faster in getting more equipment out there into the field. And I think you realise the importance of that just as much as me. So, you know, I wanted to just explain where we are and really give you the idea as to how things can be improved. It's simply, you know, funding and rate of funding, just like a lot of things in this world. Okay, so I'll leave it here, guys. You know, you enjoy your day. Take care of your loved ones. I'll say what I usually do. Bye for now.